Hi there, GMC owners. Today in your 2013 GMC Terrain, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Blue Ox's base plate. And this is what our base plate looks like when it's installed. It passes through the opening here at the bottom of your fascia, so it integrates very nicely into our vehicle, and it kind of just looks like it was supposed to be there. It kind of, in my opinion, gives it a more aggressive look, like maybe you're doing some off-roading stuff. People that aren't in the know about flat towing might think you're doing something crazy with this thing, but so it's kind of cool. Definitely going to be a conversation starter. It's got your typical things you'd find on a base plate. It has your attachment points, one on each side for your tow bar to attach to. Got your safety cable attachments on each side as well. And I like that Blue Ox provided a mounting location for our electrical connector right here in the center, as well as one for the breakaway switch for our supplemental braking system. So that pretty much encompasses everything that we really would want out of a base plate. We've got it all right here. Quick brief overview of all the components we've got here, because there are 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your vehicle behind your motorhome. You'll need your tow bar, which is the connection between your motorhome and your vehicle. Your safety cables, which is a supplementary connection in addition to your tow bar. Your base plate, which is the connection on your vehicle for your tow bar and safety cables to attach to. Your diode wiring, which takes all the lighting signals from your motorhome and transfers them to the lights at the back of your vehicle so people know your intentions when going down the road. And lastly, your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes in your vehicle when you hit them in your motorhome to help you have a nice, smooth braking operation. When you're ready to flat tow your vehicle, you can take the removable arms, and these will insert in here. Just give it a twist until it locks into place. That's where our attachment here will connect to any Blue Ox tow bar. We do have adapters available here at etrailer, so if you have a different manufacturer's tow bar, you can swap out the ends so you can connect it up to this base plate. I do like that the attachment is removable though, because when you've got it in here, you know, ready for flat tow and stuff, when you go to pull it in your garage, whenever you go to walk by the front of your vehicle, you've got a hazard here, potentially knocking your shin on it, hurt pretty bad. So it's cool that we can just pull that pin there, give this a twist, and pop this out of here for when we're not flat towing, kind of minimize that distance at the front. And for some garages, it could make or break whether or not your vehicle even fits. Terrain's pretty small, so I doubt you're gonna run into that, but hitting your shins on here is definitely no fun. When you go to flat tow your vehicle behind your motorhome and you hook up your base plate, one of the things you wanna make sure that you're achieving in your full flat tow setup is a level tow bar. If your tow bar is up too high or too low, it's either gonna pull up or pull down on your vehicle every time you take off, and that's gonna put excessive wear on our suspension components that we don't need to have. It's also a little bit harder on the tow bar and all the components as well, because we're not pulling it just like rolling the tires, we're kind of lifting, adding additional load that doesn't need to be there. There are high-low adapters available here at etrailer, so you can adjust the height of your motorhome's receiver to match your base plate. On this base plate, we measure right at about 15 inches. So ideally, we want the receiver at the center of our receiver on our motorhome to be about 15 inches. A good rule of thumb is about 3 inches plus or minus. So in this case, we have 15 inches here on the base plate, anywhere from 12 to 18 inches for our motorhome would be acceptable. Anywhere out of that, we would want to get a high-low to bring us into that tolerable range. So now we got our base plate all installed. We're gonna go ahead and hook it up to our motorhome now. Make sure you got your arms inserted, your tow bar on your motorhome. If you got it in the storage position, we'll wanna take it out of there. Take our cables off of here. Lift up on it. Release it from that storage position. And then we can spread our arms apart here. And we're gonna remove the pins. Now you might be thinking to yourself, hey, that's a Roadmaster tow bar and it's got Blue Ox adapters on the end. That's right, because we swapped them over because our customer has a Blue Ox base plate. Looks like we're not quite close enough yet, so we're gonna pull our vehicle up just a few inches here so we can make our attachment. And now with our vehicle a little bit closer, we're able to get those to all line up. We'll slide our pins through and make sure we put the other pin on the other side to lock it in place. We'll then repeat that over here on the other side for this arm. Next, we'll hook up our safety cables. These come with the tow bar. We hooked up the passenger side here, and that means on our motorhome, we're actually gonna hook this same cable up that's going from the passenger side on our vehicle, and we're going to bring this over to the driver's side on our motorhome's hitch. Our other safety cable, we're going to hook up just the opposite of that. We're going to take this end here, hook it to our motorhome on the passenger side. That's going to go over to the driver's side on our vehicle for our other one. And then we can just hook up the rest of our flat toe components. That typically includes your diode wiring and supplemental braking system. So we'll just plug those in. You do get a 7 to 6 cable included with this Sterling tow bar here on our motorhome. Now you might be wondering too that, hey, you said it came with the 7 to 6. Our customer didn't have a 7-way on his motorhome, so we swapped out the 7-way end with the 6-way for him. And then your supplemental braking system usually has a breakaway cable that you'll need to attach. So we'll get this hooked up, attach it to the breakaway switch, and then we're going to bring this over to our hitch. The carabiner is probably too small to hook onto your receiver directly, so just slide the carabiner down through your safety chain attachment on your hitch, and then you can just hook the cable back onto itself. And then depending on your braking system, you may have additional supplementary connections. We're using Roadmaster's Invisibreak, and that does have a supplementary connection here. And we're going to kind of route it down through this breakaway cable a little bit to help keep the cable up off the pavement. Just plugs into the bullet connector, and then the same thing here on the other side. We'll route over to this side. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to run it down through this breakaway switch cable and then attach it here on this side. So now that we've got everything hooked up here, we're ready to place our vehicle into flat tow and hit the road. So now that we've covered some of the features of our base plate here, why don't you follow along with us in the shop and we'll show you how to get it installed. We'll begin our installation with the hood open. We're going to be removing our fascia here. So we've got a couple fasteners here on top when we open the hood. You can see there's a couple right there. We'll grab our T20 Torx to remove these. After we remove these two here on the driver's side, there's two over on the passenger side in a very similar location. So we'll be removing these as well. Now that we've got those guys out of the way, just to the outside of where we remove those, you're going to have two push pins. We're going to remove these as well. If you'll notice, there's a small kind of notched area on your push pin. You can fit the blade of a flat bladed screwdriver in there. Just kind of twist it to pop that up, and then we can pull the whole thing out of there. Sometimes you got to give it a little bit of assistance popping it up. Do the same thing for the other one here. Pop this one up. And that should be enough there just to kind of separate it from our fascia. So we're going to go ahead to the other side now, remove those pins, and then just pull that piece up just like that. We're now on our driver's side, and we took the steering wheel and we turned it towards the passenger side. That's going to give us a little bit more room to work here. We're going to remove the fasteners that run down the front edge here of our inner fender liner. There are two bolts we'll remove using that same T20 Torx, and there are two push pins, and they remove just like the ones that we had removed up top. Once we get these removed here, we'll turn our steering wheel the other direction, and it's not uncommon for these ones to be a lot stiffer because dirt and debris and a lot of stuff gets up inside of there, and if that happens, once you get it popped out like this, rather than just keep kind of like flexing the head there, which will usually eventually leads to it breaking off, we're gonna take some needle nose pliers and get under there and grab it. You could also use a trim panel tool, but I prefer the needle nose over the trim panel tools. If you get it popped out a little bit. If you're struggling to even get it popped out, you might try that trim panel tool. And then we'll get the lower one here. And if you pull these out and the centerpiece comes out of the pin there, you can just push them back together just like that. Just start it in there and you're good to go. Now at the bottom of the vehicle at the front, right here at the edge, you'll have some hardware. You'll have 2 on each side. So we're on the passenger side here. We're going to use our 7mm socket to zip both of these out of here. And we're going to head over to the driver's side and remove the 2 that's over there. Now on each side, if we take that fender liner that's loose now, we got those bolts on the bottom loose, we can get this peeled back a little bit. We're just kind of pushing it in. That's our fog light right there. So we can go ahead and disconnect the fog light connector. Just make it a little bit easier to do it now versus when we're trying to hold the fascia up. To release the connector, there's a tab on each side. You have to pull that out, then pull the other side out, and then it pulls straight down. So we're going to head over to the other side on the driver's side, peel this back and disconnect it over there as well. So now we're going to start removing the fascia. We're going to start right here on the edge. Just kind of peel the fender liner out just a little bit and grab the fascia here, and we're just going to pull outward on it, just like that, and get it released right to this point here when you get to this seam. Once you get here to this spot, just run over to the other side real quick, grab that side, and pop it out to the exact same point. Now we're going to kind of brace ourselves a little bit closer to the center because it's getting pretty close to coming off here now. We want to be prepared for it. So now we're going to release this side from here, and this kind of just pulls outward. There we go, just like that. Work our way towards the center here. We're then just kind of switching sides, doing the same thing over here. Get that pulled out. There we go. And now we're just going to gently start walking it away. Checking for any other electrical connectors that may or may not be present. Looks like we're good to go here. We don't have anything else on this one. If you have like a park sense or anything like that, you may or may not have some that's still there you need to disconnect. We'll now set this to the side where it won't get damaged. Now we get that fascia out of our way. On the passenger side, we're going to remove this baffle here for the air intake. There's 2 nuts we're going to remove, one here, and the other one's kind of tucked up right back in there. We'll use our 10mm socket here to remove these. You'll probably need a pretty long extension to be able to get to this one here. Let's see, here we go. After we remove both of the nuts, we can pull outward to slide it off of the studs, and then this should just drop down. You might have to twist it kind of just a little bit here to get it out of the opening, and then we'll just set this aside. All right, so now we're going to cut out this area here. We've revealed kind of the area here by getting that box out of the way on the passenger side, and we want it to be flush with the side of the frame and flush with the bottom of our cross beam here. So I just went ahead and marked it. You can find that same marking in your instructions. And then we're going to use a reciprocating blade here to trim this out. The hardest part's getting it started. And now we're going to just perform the same procedures on the other side to get that one notched out. On this side, be careful of your reservoir there when cutting this out. And to protect our freshly cut metal here from any future corrosion, we're just going to hit it with a little bit of clear coat, and we'll do the same thing over on the other side. We're now going to grab the outer edge of our cross beam here, and we want to get this so it's a nice 90-degree angle. See how it's angled inward at the bottom just a little bit, so we're going to pull that out. And that's pretty close, trying to get it as close to 90 as possible, maybe a little bit more. That looks good there, and we'll do the same thing over on the other side. Next, we're going to remove our temperature sensor. So this is the passenger side here, just underneath that cross beam for the bumper. You'll find your temperature sensor located here. So we're going to remove this out of here. We're going to use our needle nose pliers to just get underneath of it and just kind of pop it up out of there. We'll be relocating this and zip tying it to another location. Probably something similar to this. So we're just going to kind of drop it down in this spot here for now, just to kind of keep it up out of our way. Now the mount here, where it used to be, we're gonna trim this out. I've gone ahead and marked the area where we need to trim it out because our cross tube for our base plate's gonna sit here. So it's kind of in our way. So we're just gonna grab our cutoff wheel now and zip that out. And then if you wanted to, you can take a file to clean this up, but really, I mean, this is gonna be completely hidden behind our cross tube here for our base plate. So you're not gonna see any of this. So really it's not that important cosmetically. The main thing is that we've got the clearance for our base plate to fit. Now with an extra set of hands, we're gonna lift our base plate into position. You'll kind of rock it into place so you can go above the plastic here at the front, but also get around the outside. And then we want to lift it all the way up and clamp it into position. Now that we've got our base plate clamped into position, you do want to double check your measurement. You want from the bottom edge here to the top edge of this to be about 1/8 of an inch. So we got our clamps in place holding it there. You can also use a clamp here to kind of squeeze this forward to help you. We did move that out of the way after we kind of got it into position. Give ourselves a little bit more room here to drill because we are going to be drilling out these holes here. We're going to use a 13 30-second drill bit to drill those out. And we're going to start with our bottom one here on each side just to get a bolt in it so that way we're not relying on the clamps alone to hold this up here. So I put a little bit of lubricant in there to make it easier to drill, and then we're just going to head straight on through. And these are the two size bolts you get in your kit. We're going to use the shorter ones for these lower ones. So we'll just set those longer ones off to the side. All of our hardware that we use to attach our base plate, we're going to use red Loctite on. You can get some here at eTrailer if you need some. We'll then just take our bolt, slide it on through, and on the other side, we're going to place our nut. And it's actually easier if you hold the nut in place and thread the bolt into it, just because there's kind of like a cross, almost like a gusset support angled iron there. So do it like that. We're going to head over to the other side, drill that one out, and get that one started, and then we can tighten both of these down here, keeping everything kind of in place for us. So we went over to the other side, we got that one drilled out, got our hardware started. We're now going to take ourselves a 9/16 socket and wrench to snug this hardware down. Now that we have our lower bolts tightened down, it is a good idea to just double check your measurements, make sure you're at your 1 1/8 and everything looks nice and smooth and level. If everything looks good there, then you can move on and drill out the remaining holes. We've got 3 on each side we still got to drill out. So we'll put a little bit of lubricant in there and then use the same size bit and drill these out. All right, we got all our holes drilled out. I did put the clamp back on there just to hold it to make sure nothing moved while we were drilling, even though we do got those snugged down. It just kind of helps that, makes things a little better that way. We're gonna put some Loctite on our hardware before we install it. Same with all of our bolts here we're gonna attach our base plate with. We'll slide a lock washer on our bolt, followed by a flat washer. And then this is just gonna slide right through the attachment holes that we had just drilled, and we're going to thread them into a handle nut. There's a square opening here on the bottom of your frame, so you can stick it in there. It's kind of like right here, so it's a little offset So we're going to kind of need to angle it like that to reach up there. And you're also more than likely going to need to kind of angle it a little bit like this to kind of shoot it closer to the outside edge. We're just going to poke it in that square opening then. And then we'll bring it up. Also doesn't hurt to put a little 90 degree at the end. Gives you a little bit more control. And I'm just trying to feel for my bolt, kind of when I hit it. And there we go, I'm hitting it there, so that means I gotta be pretty close. And then kind of just, as you're feeling around there, you'll get it to hook on the end, and then just thread it in there until you get it started. We're now just going to repeat that for the remaining 2 holes on this side, and then the 3 remaining holes it's going to be on the other side. And you may also have to bend some 90 degree angles in here to get to your over to your bolt attachment point. Really, it's just kind of a trial and error. Put some bends in it, get it to kind of get roughly in that location, put a few more bends in it, and kind of check and see where you're at. And we're just going to keep repeating that over here on the other side. So I always like to take a look here. This is our square hole too. You can kind of just figure out where your square hole is. You know your bolt's going to be there, you know, so let's see if we can't maneuver this where we need it to be. We got each one of them started now. We can now take our 9/16 socket and go back and tighten them all down. We can now go back and torque our hardware to the specifications outlined in our instructions. Now we've got all of our hardware torqued down. The excess handle nut that's sticking out here on the bottom, we can trim all this off. And the way I like to do this is I'll just take my snips up here and I'll grab a hold of the handle nut, and then as I'm squeezing it, I'm just kind of bending it back and forth, and it just glides right on through it like butter from there. We'll do the same thing with the other one, and then we'll hop over to the other side to trim those off. Next, we're going to attach our permanent safety cables. These we're going to wrap around the frame here, and they're going to attach to the quick link here. This quick link hooks to the loop here on the bottom, so we're just going to slide our quick link on there just like that. Then we're going to take our safety cable and we're slide it up the inside of the frame, and I'm checking the inside here, feeling for any wires or hoses, because we don't want to pinch anything in between our safety cable and the frame. So we're going to make sure we go around this wiring component here. Again, we don't want to pinch anything between the frame. And there we go. We're nice, we're over, we're not pinching any wires. So then we can just slide our safety cable on, slide the other end of it on, and then just tighten it down. Once we get this side snugged up here, we'll grab the other quick link and the other cable and run it around the frame over on the other side. So now that we got our safety cables in place here, the sensor that we had removed over here and we trimmed out its mounting location, we can actually poke it right into a hole here at the bottom of the bumper. There was one right there in the bottom of the beam, and you're able to just poke that right down in there. If we go straight over to the other side, you'll have another one of those little tabs there with a hole in it. I took my pry bar and I stuck it right here on top of the base plate beam here and just kind of bent that up. By bending it up, you can see the opposite one on this side, how it's resting on top of the base plate. By bending it up, it gives us the clearance we need to install the breakaway switch mount. So we'll take our breakaway switch mount and one of the bolts that comes in our kit. We're gonna line it up with that hole and then throw the bolt up through the bottom of that hole and then up through the bumper beam, just like that. And then we can take one of the flange nuts that come in our kit and thread that on the opposite side. And it is a little bit close to your safety cable attachment. So if you wanted to, you could even angle this off to the side just a little bit. That's gonna work out just fine for us if we did that. Because you can see here, this is the breakaway switch. So that angles us plenty far down, and there's plenty of room here for us to still mount the switch. And they see it kind of angling it off to the side there. Really positions us in a nice spot kind of evenly between our components. So that's all we're gonna do. We're just gonna kind of cock that off to the side a little bit and then mount it up here. You do also have the option to drill a hole out into the bottom of your bumper beam here and attach it through that hole. That'll position it out just a little bit further, but this should be plenty far out. If we look where our pin is here in our breakaway switch, it's kind of be even with the attachment point here for our safety cables. So we know we're gonna have to be able to get to these to attach our cables. So this will be plenty accessible and nicely hidden this way. A little bit further back and a little bit lower as well, mounting it in this location. It's also easier because this material is very difficult to drill through. So now we'll just grab ourselves a 11mm socket and wrench and tighten those down. And there we go. Just need to snug it up. And if you've got your breakaway switch, you can go ahead and mount it to that as well. Typically your breakaway switch is going to be a separate component. Usually you can get one included with your braking system, and that's where the one that we're going to be installing came from today, and the hardware comes with the braking system. We can now take the baffle that we had removed here, make sure to rotate that up into position and push it into the air cleaner there. So we are making sure that we line that up. And then slide it over the studs here and reattach the nuts. Now, one of the things I am noticing here is that our baffle is hitting on the base plate. Let's see here. Yeah, we're making contact here with the base plate. So we are going to be able to get some of the hardware on here, but I would not recommend tightening it too tight. And actually, we might leave that one off of there because it does collide here. So we're probably just going to snug down this one and see where that leaves us. And I think that we could probably push that in a little bit and get that started, and it would be okay. So we're just pushing in on that, getting our nut to start there, and then just putting a little bit of pressure on it, nothing crazy. Because this is just an air baffle here. You know, your air intake to the engine goes in through here. It's still going to get filtered and everything before it goes to the engine. This just kind of helps reduce that air intake noises that you hear. So now that we've got our base plate fully torqued down, got our other components reinstalled here, at this point we would be putting our fascia back in place. But I recommend that you hold off on reinstalling your fascia and finish up any other flat toe components you're going to install. And this typically includes your diode wiring and your supplemental braking system. While we got this fascia out of the way, routing all of our wires and getting everything set up here at the front is going to be a whole lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and complete the rest of those components, get all those installed, then we'll come back here and I'll show you how to trim out the front of your fascia here to get that back on. So now we've got everything installed on our vehicle. We're getting ready to put our fascia back on now. All of our flat toe components, we've got everything routed up there. We do need to do some minor trimming to our fascia here for it to fit to clear the base plate. You'll have this little tab here on each side, and just to the inside of this little tab, this is where we need to trim out kind of this attachment right here. So we're just going to kind of just bring this over and just kind of notch this out a little bit. Be very careful. Kind of pay attention to the other side of this when you're making your marks and going to cut, because this is pretty thin and this you can easily cut a hole in your fascia, and we don't want to expose any holes. We just want to cut this material out behind the fascia, not actually through the fascia. So now we're just going to trim this out here with our cutoff wheel. All right, and then we'll trim out the other side the same way. So now that we got it trimmed out, we're just gonna test fit it here. Slide this into place. And as we're going in, we're gonna double check down here to make sure we pass through. And we're hitting on our electrical attachments a little bit here. Just bend it down around those. Well, I think we're gonna have to bend those up some, because it doesn't look like we're quite gonna clear. So we're gonna modify the base plate a little bit here by bending these electrical attachments, little prongs here, and then we're gonna retry this attachment again. And the way we're gonna modify this so that way our fascia is gonna fit is we're just gonna bend these straight up because they were bent too far down from the factory. So just slide, I'm just using an extension with a socket on it. In this case, it's a 12 millimeter. We're just looking for one though that slides over the shaft and isn't too sloppy. And then just pull up a little bit. The same thing on this side, pull up a little bit. And then we'll recheck our fit. So once again, we're gonna gently slide our fascia into position here. And head down below here so we can check to see what we need to do here to get this to all clear. And it needs to come down. That looks pretty good. Looks like we've got to bend up on our breakaway switch just a little bit. Just push upwards on that to bend it. After we push our fascia back on, we're just going to reinstall all of our fasteners in reverse order of how we removed them. Don't forget to get behind your assembly here and plug your electrical connectors back in as well. You can reach just behind those fender liners like we did when we disconnected them. And that completes our installation of Blue Ox's base plate on our 2013 GMC Terrain.